I know there's a part of me that is powerful and I can feel my power at times. And yet there are so many contexts in my life where I struggle to step into my power and really hold on to my power.
Welcome to I Think I Can podcast. My name is Luella Young. I am a woman who believes that we, like wine, get better with age. Age brings us wisdom, intuition, and a level of sophistication that is beyond the reach of youth. I am here to tell you that living a luxuriously rich and fulfilling life is in your reach. I Think I Can podcast will teach you to think differently in order to get different results. Allow me to show you how to do life effortlessly. This podcast is for the woman who is tired of playing by the rules of society, community, religion, parents, and partners. I Think I Can is all about becoming brave, authentic, purposeful, and strong. Listen weekly and you will find yourself living a life you could have only once dreamed of. Thoughts drive our physiology, so channel your thoughts with me into a life truly worth living. Enjoy the show. Hello, welcome back to I Think I Can podcast. Today I had the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Shyamala. Dr. Shyamala is an ex-therapist turned leadership mentor, obsessed with the connection between our emotional intelligence and our capacity for success, both personally and professionally. Shyamala is also an author, a podcaster, and a mom who's based out of Toronto. Now, I personally feel like this topic is not discussed enough, and perhaps it is because people do not actually realize that it is possible to regulate your emotions, to have agency over how you think and act. Well, Shyamala and I are here today to tell you that it is possible when you are willing to look at the underlying scripts and paradigms that you have going on in your head at any given time. Because these habits of thoughts, beliefs, and ways of thinking are essentially hijacking your ability to choose your higher emotions. What do I mean about higher emotions? Those are the feelings of joy, guiltless, humor, vibrancy, liberation, feeling energized, compared to what your lower emotions would be, such as guilt, shame, procrastination, rumination, or hopelessness. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. So yes, welcome, Shyamala. So nice to have you here.
It's so wonderful to be here, Luella.
Well, let's get into the topic of relationships. I know you do a lot of different things, but your background, your doctorate again, can you remind me?
Yeah, it is in couple and family. And so for almost 20 years, I practiced as a psychotherapist, and my specialty was couple and family work. And so as I've moved into the coaching space, a lot of that has followed me, a lot of work around emotional intelligence. But really my expertise, I would say, and my passion these days is really helping women to show up more powerfully in their relationships.
Okay, so what does that look like? I have a feeling it has something to do with balance, like work and family balance.
Yeah. So for me, it's really about the emotional intelligence.
Okay.
So the crux of my work, and it's interesting how, the context has shifted for me. The context has changed, but so much the meat of the conversations is so similar in terms of who I was seeing, the things they were struggling with, and the path forward. So, when I was practicing as a psychotherapist, I had so many really like visionary women, high achieving, high performing, even type A women coming into my practice, and they were really nailing it in a lot of areas in their life. They felt like they were showing up very powerfully in their professional context. They really felt like they had the skills to, climb the corporate ladder. I worked with a lot of, C-suite women at the time that I was practicing. But where they really struggled was to find their voice inside of their personal relationship. So it could have been their marriage, could have been in terms of parenting, and often navigating family of origin relationships as well. So setting boundaries, staying emotionally regulated, being able to, step away from this pull to control outcomes, which I think was often what got so many of the women I worked with, like it just really was dysregulating, right? And it just takes us right out of our power. And it was very parallel to my own journey. So
Okay.
my own personal journey in navigating my marriage, navigating parenting, navigating entrepreneurship, all of those pieces that was unfolding for me as well. I was struggling in terms of emotion regulation, in terms of communication, in terms of boundary setting. And so this is really what began to shape the context for my practice and what I became really, really
Okay.
interested in. And I don't know if
Yeah,
I
I
don't know
see
if you
the
show
book in the
video,
back.
but the
Yeah,
book,
yeah.
yeah, The Emotionally Intelligent Woman, like that's really, it was birthed out of seeing so much of the same sort of narrative over and over and over again with women. It's like, I know there's a part of me that is powerful and I can feel my power at times. And yet there are so many contexts in my life where I struggle to step into my power and really hold on to my power.
Okay. So are you saying, are you referring to like having a difficulty with, like, you know, you feel like you have control in your work, you feel very powerful in your work, but then you come home and you you're not feeling the same way? Is it like it's sort of the masculine versus feminine energy in that sense, or
Um,
no?
not necessarily, but
Okay.
I think part of it is, so there's a few things. There's a few
Okay.
things to this context. So let me give it a little more context. So one of the things that I noticed in my practice is that whenever I had a woman who presented with mental health distress,
Mm-hmm.
so low moods, anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
overwhelm, anything that was really impacting her mental health in a negative way, whether that was
Yeah.
diagnosed or undiagnosed. What I also found is that she was experiencing relationship distress,
Yeah.
that
Makes
there was a
sense.
strong
Yeah.
correlation between her mental health distress and her relationship distress. And the next thing I noted in my practice is that 90% of what was dysregulating for a woman was distress in her personal relationships. And that distress didn't always look like conflict. That
Mm-hmm.
distress could look like, I don't know how to use my voice in
Mm.
my marriage. Distress could look like, I feel really guilty every time I set a boundary with my child.
Okay.
Distress could look like, I have an emotionally enmeshed relationship with my mother. And even though I'm in my 30s or 40s, I don't know what to do about that. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
how to actually navigate that relationship. And so all of a sudden, in these personal relationships, I can't find my power.
Yeah.
I can't find my voice. I don't feel self-regulated.
Mm-hmm. And I'm guessing, what do you think is the most popular compensatory strategy that these women use when they're feeling like that?
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of guessing they shut down. Would you
Mm-hmm.
would you agree?
Yeah. So there a few different things. I mean, withdrawing and shutting down. Um, in some ways, yes, that could be sort of what we see at the surface, but often when we dig deeper, there's so much more going on. And what ends up
Mm-hmm.
happening is the woman develops a very negative self script.
Mm,
She begins to really tap into old stories, old
mm,
programming
mm,
around her worthiness, her
mhm,
enoughness, her lovableness. And so, yes, on the outside, sometimes we see shutting down, but quite often we see passive aggression.
mm,
We can also see some aggression, and aggression is not necessarily loud and
mhm,
scary and swearing. It's not like what we typically think of when we think about aggressive communication. Aggressive communication can look like being very fixed on the outcome that you desire,
mm,
and
mm.
and things having to go your way.
Yeah,
It can be very
controlling.
manipulative, very controlling, right? Same with passive
Mhm,
aggression. It's being
mhm,
fixed on the outcome, but never overtly naming it.
mhm,
And so this is a very toxic dance that we can do inside of our relationships.
mhm.
And the one you're speaking of when you say shutting down is the passive communication style. That's the
Yeah.
withdrawing and the pulling away. So I would say all three of those styles of communication is what I've seen is passive, passive aggressive, and aggressive. And the what stepping into our power looks like from a communication perspective inside of our relationships is the assertive style of communication. So a lot of the work that I do with women
Mhm,
is really helping them to understand how to use the assertive style of communication on a day-to-day basis, what it really
mhm,
looks like, because there's so many misconceptions around what it means to be an assertive woman.
mhm,
So many. And I think we often think it's what is actually the aggressive style of communication,
mm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. So can you give examples, one versus another? Any
Mm-hmm.
sort of context of what assertion would look like versus a controlling or
Yeah. So the bigger context to the assertive style of communication. So the framework that I developed and that we use is one that starts with emotional mastery.
mm-hmm,
So here's the thing. I wish there was a three-step, this is how you are assertive, but that's just not the type of work that I do. Um, I deeply believe in the deeper work. And so in order to truly stand in our power, in order
mm-hmm.
to truly um, practice assertiveness, we have to start with being able to master our emotions. And
Yeah.
that doesn't mean controlling our emotions. It doesn't mean minimizing our emotions. It doesn't mean
Mm-hmm,
ignoring our emotions, but
mm-hmm,
really having the emotional intelligence to be able to acutely be aware of what we like, our triggers, what we're feeling, what's
mm-hmm,
happening inside of us, the stories that we're telling ourselves,
mm-hmm.
and how that impacts us on a moment to moment basis as we're moving through our day and
Right.
interacting with people. So it
Right.
starts with that. So we actually do a lot of work first and foremost around emotional mastery.
Okay. So the power of awareness, the awareness of your thoughts on almost, any given moment of your day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the power of awareness is the first step, but the real magic is in the ability to self-regulate.
Yeah.
Right, so
Yeah.
it's the awareness, and then what am I going to do with that? What am I going to do?
Mm-hmm.
What, like, I'm noticing, or I'm aware that I'm
Mm-hmm.
really triggered
Mm-hmm.
every single time my partner
Mm-hmm.
comes home from work and doesn't say
Mm-hmm.
hello within
Mm-hmm.
10
Mm-hmm.
seconds.
Yeah.
That's a trigger for me.
Yeah.
Great. So what am I going to now? Where's the regulation? Where's the emotion regulation? So for me, emotional mastery is the awareness coupled with what am I now doing to really regulate myself and take
Mm-hmm.
radical ownership of my thoughts and my feelings and my
Mm-hmm.
behaviors.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. Taking responsibility for, yeah, it starts within, right? And any change in the relationship, it starts with you. So would you say, like, are you working with the couple then or solely with women?
Yeah. So when I was practicing, I saw a lot of couples inside of my
Okay.
practice,
Yeah.
and so I used the emotionally focused model
Yeah.
of therapy for couples.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a beautiful model. I
Yeah.
really believe in it. And my practitioners at my clinic, that's the work they continue to do.
Okay.
Inside of my coaching business, the EQ Code, I work exclusively with women.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Makes sense. Okay. So you find that are you saying what you're saying is that they see that by becoming more emotionally intelligent, their relationships are either improving, or maybe they're just gaining a lot more insight of the relationship and making different choices, perhaps. Okay.
So I believe that one person has the power to dramatically improve their relationships. So while I have experienced the effectiveness of couples therapy, one of the things I noted when I was in practice is that I saw far more women come in individually and on their own
Yeah.
with relationship distress than I saw couples coming in together. So
exactly.
it was still, despite the sort of expertise within my clinic and my practice, women would flock to my practice because they wanted somebody with those skills in managing relationships, but their partner often was not on the same path of change or transformation. And I also believe, we each have our own paths, and that our job isn't to pull somebody onto our path or our pace. So I saw a lot of women on their own, and I became really interested in, is that possible? In answering the question, is it possible that one person within a couple system could influence and impact the entire system for good? And the resounding answer for me was, yeah. I mean, that's what my book is based on, right? It's really, how do we, like, if we can master our emotions, if we can communicate fearlessly, if we learn to lead ourselves with confidence, then what happens in our lives? And what I found time and in my own, I talk a lot about my own struggles in my own marriage, and how I was able to shift some of those dynamics simply by taking radical responsibility for myself, and how that allowed me to really invite my partner into a new context.
Okay. So, maybe tell us a little bit about your story and your journey. I'm guessing you started off with traditional couples therapy, and how did you even come about the concept of doing it on your own, individual?
Yeah. So my context, yeah, as I said, my master's is in counseling. Then I went on to do a doctorate in couple and family work. And I think for me, it was a couple of things that intersected at the same time. Number one, I was practicing for about, I'm trying to remember now, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years, something like that. 5 years before I got married. And then I became a mom. Like, I think it was like within a year of marriage, we had our daughter. And so my daughter's almost 13 now. And so once I started having the lived experience of what it's like to navigate life with another adult who I still love dearly and was very, very different from me, I would say we are both very strong personalities, very career driven, very motivated individuals, very ambitious individuals. And so this creates a very interesting dynamic, right? And so I was personally experiencing that. And I believe like attracts like. And so I was attracting a lot of women into my practice who had similar experiences.
Absolutely.
And, often the question is, when I'm doing the assessment with clients, I'm assessing for, what is the crux of the issue, not just what is the client presenting with. And when I looked at the crux of the issue, if it tied back to relationship distress, which it often did, part of the assessment was assessing partners' desire, interest, willingness to be part of the therapeutic process. And quite often partner just wasn't there at that point. And so we jumped in. great. Well,
Yep.
let's do everything we can so that you are your
Mhm.
best, most empowered self.
Mhm.
And then let's look at what shifts. And almost always, the relationship improved.
Yeah.
And there were also times where the woman decided that this was not the right relationship for her any longer.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
both outcomes were present.
Yeah.
But I have to say, in my experience, I saw many relationships improve.
Exactly. Yeah. So you did do couples therapy like with your own partner or husband first, and then or did you do more individual yourself, and like what was your own
Yeah.
experience?
So my experience was I did do my own individual therapy, and I talk about that extensively in the book, what that
Book.
process
Yeah.
was like, what that journey was like. So I, and in the book, I talk about there was this one conversation that I had with my therapist where she helped me to understand that I was very reactive inside
Mm.
of my marriage. Like I was very emotionally reactive,
Mm-hmm.
and that I was not taking responsibility for my emotions.
Mm-hmm.
I externalized a lot of that and put that, and that
Mm-hmm.
was a pattern that I had
Yeah.
grown up with.
Yeah.
And so that's really, I think, part of what helped me to see um, how much as individuals we contribute to systemic dynamics.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, my own personal practice too. I mean, so many couples come in, pointing fingers at one another, right?
Yeah.
And they want to change the other person. I mean, we all hear, I think we all are very aware, the saying you can't change another person, but I think, you know what, like honestly, I think everybody that steps into a relationship, I mean, you're young, you're in love. And when those red flags come up early in that relationship, I think deep down inside, we all have this sort of idea that, surely after spending enough time with me, you'll see it my way. And
Mm,
because I do things better, and
mhm.
I think better, I act better, and you're a work in progress, but myself, you'll see it my way eventually.
Yeah,
We're very we're very disillusioned. Yeah.
it's true. And I
Yeah.
think adding to that, like the layer of, I was a therapist, so this is what I do for a living. So obviously I know what I'm doing.
Well,
Right.
exactly.
Like there's that layer. And I think
Yes.
many of the women that I worked with were in professions that would tell them, right? There was something about what they did for a living that lended to the narrative that, well, you've got to figure it out. So
Exactly.
come on,
Yeah.
just get with the program here.
Yes. 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 Exactly. Oh, I know. I mean, we're our our situations are very, very similar in that way, that yeah, I know being a therapist sometimes just it it's tough because you're hard on yourself. You're constantly
Mm,
saying, I should be able to do this better, or I should know this better. But it certainly is very much a dance, and it is a work of introspection, and always asking yourself, how yeah, what is my concept of self? How can I do things better? How can I do
mm,
things better? And it's a gift and a curse at the same time, right? I just feel like um it's great to have all this awareness and all the material in front of us and all the information, but at the same time, yeah, we have to watch. We can be very hard on ourselves, I think. Okay, so that one therapist, it sounded like, you had a light bulb moment, with the
mm,
one therapist, when she said that you tend to be very reactive and not and less responsive, and
mm,
so she taught you how to maybe step away from the conflict and maybe self-soothe and then return, or like how did she work with you in order to improve the conflict? And I mean, I don't know, was it, yeah, first of all, just answer that question maybe.
Mhm. So, I mean, our work together, she was an EFT trained therapist. So our work together
Yeah.
was very deep. Like it wasn't behavior, like sort of those kinds of
Right.
behavioral strategies.
Yeah.
And so we looked more, we really just explored where all of that conditioning was
Okay.
coming from.
Okay.
Right.
So the
It was very exploratory. It was very insight oriented.
yeah.
It allowed me to reflect quite a bit on what it was like for me growing up. What were my templates
Mm-hmm.
for relationships? What did it
Mm-hmm.
look like when people disagreed? What did it
Yep.
look like when, like, how did conflict get resolved? Did it get
Mm-hmm.
resolved?
Mm-hmm.
All those sorts
Mm-hmm.
of scripts. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that was the biggest catalyst for me. And to back up, even before I became a therapist, I was in corporate. So I worked in human resources and
Mm-hmm.
training and development. So I sort of already had this background in understanding the importance of emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And so I naturally began to sort of fuse the two. I naturally began to bring together an understanding of our subconscious programming, our patterning, the scripts that we are basically handed to us
Yeah.
through family of origin,
Mm-hmm.
and how we can utilize emotional intelligence to begin to shift some of those really sticky areas in our life.
Right. Okay. So I think what you just described there is also the power of therapy, like
Mm.
to work through and process those scripts, those paradigms that we don't even know they're there. That's
Mhm.
I think that's a
Mhm.
beautiful thing about therapy and how it is so important is that it's very I mean it's very it's all in the subconscious. So how would we even know? But then to have a therapist point that out and then to be enlightened and again take the power back and be very, first of all, be very thankful that now you have this awareness. And then secondly, okay, let's take responsibility now. And if that's what I do, what can I do in my life to yeah, build new habits of thought, build new paradigms, build new templates, build new scripts. And the therapist can help you with that too. Now, fast forward onto coaching, how would you say, you know, after doing the work, what how does coaching help a woman? Let's say now we're post therapist.
Mhm. Mhm.
What
So I don't necessarily see it as as an and or. Like I don't
okay,
necessarily see coaching as a post therapy solution.
okay,
I really see them as just different options.
okay,
So for
okay.
some, people, um, they will never seek a coach. That may not
Mm-hmm.
be within their own understanding
Mm-hmm.
or context of healing or growth, right?
Yeah,
There are many, many people who may not see the value in
right.
hiring a mentor, for
Yeah,
example.
yeah,
And therapy will be the option for
yeah,
them, right?
yeah.
And equally so, there are people who will never get their head wrapped around the need for therapy
Right,
or clinical
right.
work, and they will be
Mm-hmm.
naturally drawn to mentorship. So the
Mm-hmm.
way I've seen it, because I still have
Yeah,
both
both.
companies,
Yeah.
and I really grappled with that as I was pulling away from my own practice, and all of those pieces were happening in my life, and where I land with it today is that I'm grateful that I can serve the world with both options
Mm-hmm.
because I believe there is an audience for both options. There's a need for both options.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not necessarily a one or another, or you do this and you graduate from this and then you go over
Mm-hmm.
here. I
Mm-hmm.
really see it as there's a match for each type of service.
Yes,
And so some will choose this one, some will choose that one, some will choose both
both.
simultaneously, some will choose
Yeah.
one and then the right. So
Yeah.
all of those configurations
Yeah.
can happen. It's the delivery. There's the context is so different, right?
Yes,
I know you know that
exactly.
as well. The context is so very different.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, yeah, very much so. No, I totally understand. But like I'm as you're speaking, I sort of wonder, do you think you can step into having a coach or a mentor, like let's say specifically with relationships? Do you think you can step into coaching in helping someone with their relationship without therapy?
Absolutely. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
I
I
agree.
have a program called the Relationship Lab, and
Okay.
it's a 1 year container.
Mhm.
And it's all women, and the transformations that we see in their relationships is
Mm-hmm.
amazing, like incredible, absolutely incredible. Yeah,
And maybe speak a little bit, because what you're talking about is group therapy there, which I think a lot of people, I think would especially when it's relationships. I don't know. What do you feel? I mean, I don't think men would jump into, group, the sort of group coaching or group therapy, maybe as much as women would, but describe how you feel it's powerful for women.
yeah. I mean, I can't speak to. So mine's not a group therapy.
Oh, it isn't.
It's
Okay.
not a
Okay.
group therapy. So I
Okay.
can give you the context. So for the Relationship Lab, it's a 1 year container, and many women renew and stay longer,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because the community is so powerful. And it's made up of a few different pieces. So there's a curriculum,
Yeah.
and so there's a very robust curriculum that provides women with the practical skills around emotional intelligence. So the curriculum
Okay.
is video
Okay.
lessons, there's a 100-page workbooks, there's worksheets that women
Mm-hmm.
are working through to really
Mm-hmm.
identify and reprogram old thinking patterns, to
Yeah.
practice. Like there's lots of frameworks that we use around communication, boundary setting, like all of those sorts of pieces.
Yeah.
And the curriculum delivers three outcomes. So it helps women to learn how to feel calm and confident regardless of external circumstances. So
Mm-hmm.
that's outcome one. The second outcome is we teach women how to communicate with absolute confidence, regardless of the context of the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And the third thing is we teach women how to set boundaries without feeling guilty.
Mm.
And so that's self-paced. They go through
Mm-hmm.
that on their own, and then they have a monthly skills clinic. And that's
Mm.
where we actually they come with their real life questions, whatever
Mm-hmm.
they're going through, whatever they're struggling with.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the mentorship and the coaching comes in. We can role play, we can, whatever it is that
Yeah.
they need support with in order to actually integrate the curriculum into their life, basically.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay. So is this a one-on-one then
Nope.
with you? Oh,
Nope. It
oh, okay.
happens like anyone can jump on to the skills clinic.
Okay.
It's hosted, not just, it's co-led by myself and another master
Okay.
coach that I have. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, and we're always adding to it, we're always, adding different layers to the program just to make it more robust. And we're seeing, where can we deliver better outcomes and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it does happen in a, like the skills clinics happen in a group context, but
Okay.
it's not what, if your audience is like sort of therapy focused, it's not what you
Mhm.
would think of as like group therapy.
No,
You know,
no,
I
no.
remember running groups. It's it's very skills based, very practical,
Okay.
very sort of focused mentorship in skill development.
Okay. And that's interesting, right? When you think of it like emotional intelligence, it's it's hard to define, and yet you're saying it's skill based. Um, which so I don't know. Do you want to explain that a little bit? Like,
Sure. Yeah.
yeah.
So, and it's interesting because I've obviously I've been on lots of podcasts
Yes.
that talk about emotional intelligence. It's a big buzzword, and
Yeah.
so the way I define it is there's a couple of aspects to it. The first, and this is how it would be defined in the research. The first set of skills that relate to emotional intelligence are all about your ability to regulate yourself.
Okay.
It's what is your ability to truly authentically regulate yourself and
Yeah.
your emotions. The
Yes.
second set of skills is around how do you manage relationships with others. Those two aspects of emotional intelligence, I believe, are necessary.
Mm-hmm.
So for the framework that I've developed is all around the intersection between how we navigate ourselves, how we self-regulate, and how we navigate our relationships. Right?
Okay.
How does our self-regulation then allow us to show up differently in our relationships, communicate differently, set boundaries differently? There's a component of one of my programs that then goes into what does that look like in leadership,
Mm.
right? So we
Okay.
also have a leadership training program called the Leadership Lab. And so there are different aspects and different nuances, but the
Okay.
crux of emotional intelligence is about how do I regulate or master my own emotions, and then how do I navigate my relationships from that space.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because there is a lot of, I mean, I think there's a lot of inner work to do. So it's sort of like, okay, let's say I open an email or I get, yeah, a text for somebody, or I find out something, something in the media or news or whatever. And, I go to anger or frustration or deep sadness, and it's all about that as well, right? It's sort of,
Mm,
I mean, again, being aware of your thoughts and your emotions, rather than just feeling like I'm, you know yeah, like I'm hopeless, I feel sad, I want to crawl into
mm,
bed, I
mm,
just, I want to disengage with everybody. um yeah, I think you're right. That's real. That's the foundation, and then adding the relation piece to that as
mhm.
well.
And the
Yeah.
way I see our three core pillars are emotional mastery, fearless communication, and authentic connection. For me, so there's the emotional mastery piece, there's the relationship piece. The bridge for me is the communication skills, because that's how we
Right.
move through the world. Like that's,
Yeah.
how you move through your relationships. It's how you, uh, communication is a critical
Hmm.
skill, right?
Yeah.
In not just in relationships, but in business and everything.
Yes.
And so often women come into my world because they desire to communicate with more power and more potency and all of those sorts of things,
Hmm.
um, not realizing that the reason they're so stuck is because of the emotional piece, right? It's
Yes.
the being able to master our emotions,
Yes.
the
Yes.
inner narrative, right? What are we saying to ourselves when we are interacting with another human, and does that help us to stay in our power, or does it take us out of our power?
Hmm. Hmm. And so maybe just to speak a little bit on leadership then. How does
Mhm.
leadership, like, how does leadership relate to all this? Do you mean leadership in your, like, is that sort of a global leadership, or
Mhm.
more or less in your work, or?
So we have different programs inside
Okay.
of my company. I would say the relationship lab. Every woman I work with desires to lead herself,
Yes.
right, in her
Yeah.
relationships. And so the relationship lab, I would say we have more women who are, I'd say, professional women. We do have entrepreneurs inside of that program as well.
Mm-hmm.
And they are really wanting to basically show up powerfully in all aspects of their lives, whether that's
Yeah.
at home or at work. They want to really feel that sense of I know how to not just step into my power, but I know how to stay there.
Yeah.
Because some women, for a lot of us, we kind of know, like, okay, we can step into it, but then something happens and we come out of it. Like all of a sudden
Yeah.
we're beside our power again.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then we have programs that are specifically for entrepreneurs. We have
Mm-hmm.
one called the Embodied Entrepreneur, which is something that I run live. It's a live program. It's finished. I'll probably run it again sometime this fall. But
Mm-hmm.
so, for example, that program, it takes the foundations of emotional intelligence and it takes it from a head knowledge to how do I actually embody this? Like, how do I take these beautiful skills around communication, around emotional intelligence, around relationship management. How do I take all of these skills and what does it look like to actually be the lived embodiment of those skills so that I don't feel like I need to turn it on and turn it off.
Yeah.
So that as I, jump onto recording a podcast, or if I jump into a meeting, or I jump, regardless of where my day takes me, I've actually integrated those skills in such a way that they're embodied, right? So the two areas we focus on inside my company is emotional intelligence and embodied leadership.
Okay. Makes sense. Okay. So I know we're on a tight schedule today. So why don't we just sort of end off a little bit about, like, maybe tell us again the title of your book,
Sure.
The title of your podcast, and then anything else about your company. And
So the best place to find all the things is on Instagram. So if you find me on Instagram, you will connect to my world, because if I do a lot of free masterclasses. We have one coming up, depending on when this is released. It's coming up on June 29th, I believe.
Okay.
It is called Real Power. It teaches women how to step into and hold onto their personal power, no matter what, regardless of what's happening. So Instagram, my handle there is at the EQ Code.
Okay.
My website is theeqcode.com.
Okay.
And on Facebook, we have a private group for women, and it's the EQ Code. So it's the EQ Code. It's all about emotional intelligence. Those are the best places to find me. And then the name of my book is The Emotionally Intelligent Woman. It's available, online. If you're local to Toronto, it's available in the biggest bookstores in Toronto and the surrounding area. It's available chapters, Indigo as well.
Of course, Amazon, of course.
Yeah, of course it is.
Of course. Okay. Great. And again, we'll have this all in the show notes. So no worries if you weren't able to write that down. But no, thanks so much. I think that was a very, insightful and great explanation about, emotional intelligence, because it's a little bit of a vague, like nebulous sort of, entity. I think, what is exactly emotional intelligence, and tapping into, the power of awareness and emotional regulation is so important. I mean, that's what gives, you're right. I mean, that's what gives us our power. Anybody that can regulate their emotions, you just naturally become a very powerful person, right?
That's right.
Okay. Well, have a great rest of your day. And I'm sure you and I will be in touch.
Of course. Thank you so much, Luella.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Thanks once again for joining me on another great episode of I Think I Can podcast. If you liked it, please subscribe below so you don't miss out on any future episodes. And until next week, treat each day like it was your last, because each new day is a privilege that we shan't take for granted. Cheers and have a great week. Bye-bye.